When I was 10 years old, while waiting in a parked car, a man got in and tried to drive away. Reddit, what was your scariest childhood memory? Part 1. I was 7 years old. It was a Saturday morning during the dog days of summer. My mom took my siblings and myself to eat with our grandparents. After the meal, we decided we'd reconvene at their house to visit a bit more. Being a young kid riding with your grandparents was way more exciting, so I hopped in the car. It was nice out, so I rolled down the window and stuck my head out like a dog. We pull into their driveway after some time, and I continue to enjoy the weather with my head hanging out the window. Grandpa slowly rolls up the window so he can lock a car and go inside, rolls up my neck in it, starts talking to my mom in driveway while I'm being suffocated. 2 minutes later, he realizes window won't go up and is horrified to find me literally choking to death. Grandpa almost killed me with a power window. Same thing happened to me, but it was my little brother who accidentally rolled it up. I was leaning out to look at a dead bird and suddenly I was close to death. You and I are lucky to have made it out alive. That story reminds me of the time I walked back to my parked car. I opened the door and sat down. Then I looked over to see a woman in the passenger seat staring at me with eyes filled with fear. Only then did I realize this was not my car. When I was 8 or 9, my mom had taken my little sister and I to Ireland. We were at some fair or something, I can't remember, but I got bored and wandered back to our rental car. I hop inside, find a disposable camera and take some pictures of the inside of the car. I was 8 and really artsy or something. That's when I noticed the pack of cigarettes in the cup holder. My mom doesn't smoke. I noticed the pacifier and car seat in the back, and it finally dawns on me that I'm in someone else's, thankfully, empty car. I bolted out of there pretty fast. My mom thought that stuff was hysterical. When I found my neighbor lying dead beside his back door, nothing suspicious or anything, he was just a very sick man. It did freak me out though. I was about 9 at the time. A couple in a blue car tried to abduct me while I was playing on the sidewalk outside my house. I was 5. They kept telling me how good I looked, that they would take me to a water park and introduce me to their puppy. When I made it clear I had no intention of going with them, the woman freaked out and started screaming at me to get in the car. Later, my mom told me to stay with Gracie, my friend at school, the next day because there were people in the light blue sedan creeping around the schools in the area. Who takes their puppy to the water park? When I was 10, my family were installing a deck on our second floor. I was running around the house playing tag with my sister and we took that stuff seriously. It was like parkour. Anyway, I'm chasing my sister towards the door they installed for the deck. She opens the door to run. Big mistake. There is no deck. I watched my sister fall 2 stories, hit her back on the diving board and land in the pool. She ended up with a bruise across her back and a chipped tooth, but it could have been so much worse. As I read this, I picture a very Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner scenario. A full 2 sick paws in the air, swallowing a gulp, and then gravity takes its course. I'm glad she didn't break anything. Still to this day, my sister compares her brush with death to Cowboy Bebop. I was really young, probably like 3 or 4, but I remember it pretty well. I had been sick and found out about the existence of children's Tylenol, so I climbed up to the top cupboard and ate the entire pack. I was rushed to the hospital and they had to shove a tube down my throat because I couldn't drink this charcoal stuff. The whole time I was kicking and screaming, not understanding why I was being held down. After the whole ordeal was done, I was offered an orange popsicle from a nurse. I was pissed and didn't take it. I regret it the minute she walked away. We get a lot of parents who don't know this kind of stuff. Just because it's over the counter does not mean it's safe. For anyone who's wondering, here's a little information. Tylenol is toxic to the liver in small doses. It's a great drug with essentially no side effects. Overdose on it and your liver dies. Shortly thereafter followed by you unless you can find a transplant. Same thing with stuff like NSAIDs like naproxen or ibuprofen, except they kill the kidneys and the stomach. Kidney failure, ulcers and the like. It's very easy to overdose on vitamins. Iron toxicity is seen especially in kids and it's a nasty way to go. Never give aspirin to a child unless explicitly told to by a doctor. It causes Ray's syndrome, which is lethal, something like 1/3 of the time. Basically, don't assume anything is safe just because you can get it without a prescription. Not that Declaration's parents didn't know that, but for the rest of y'all who might benefit from this information someday. One time when I was in 5th grade, I was walking home like usual and then some truck pulled up next to me. It was some bald guy who just kept smiling when I would glance back at him. So I started walking faster and faster until I heard him say, "Hey, do you want to ride?" At this point he got off his truck and started coming towards me, so I ran like crazy down the road. I ran until I couldn't see him anymore and ran to a random house, opened the door and ran to a couch right next to the door and dug my face in the cushion. About 10 minutes passed, so I decided to poke my head out to see where I was. There was a man and a woman just staring at me like I was robbing their house or something. Then I walked out and went home without saying a word. It was pretty cool. They didn't say anything to you? Not even, "Are you okay, little kid?" Nope. I didn't even give them a chance to either. I saw them, got up and walked out the door. I don't walk in front of that house anymore in case they recognize me somehow. My mom was putting me to bed when I was about 5. As she turned off the light and closed the door, she said to me, "Watch out for the man in your closet." I sprang out of bed to open the door and she was holding the handle from the other side. To this day, she thinks it's hilarious. My mom used to wait a little bit after I went to bed, made sure the lights were off in my room and the hallway, and crawled down quietly through the hallway. I used to sleep with my door open and could see the hallway from where I lay in bed, and move really slowly until she was a dark shape in my line of vision, at which point she would speed up with jerky body motions and freak me out. My dad used to hide behind my curtains and wait for me to fall half asleep and scare the life out of me. My parents were bullies. I was 8 and vacationing in China with my parents. Apparently, I don't remember this, in a crowded train station we were walking and some man grabbed my hand and tried to lead me away. I wasn't paying attention and I thought he was my dad. Fortunately, my dad saw and beat the life out of that guy. Go Dad! Relevant story. I was 7 years old in Tenerife on holiday. Some random dude in his marketplace starts stroking my sister's, 5ish at the time, face and calling her princess. Without missing a beat, my dad turned around, punched the guy in the face, took my sister's hand and carried on walking. Went for ice cream on my bike with my brother when I was 9 and he was 6. We had to bike down kind of a deserted country road in broad daylight, but it was usually pretty safe. I heard a car coming fast and told my brother to get out of the way, but I wasn't so lucky. The car sideswiped me on the shoulder, totaled my bike, and I broke a few bones on my right side. There is no way that person wasn't aiming for me. I haven't ridden a bike since. Who does that? I know these identical twins in high school. They were very smart, fun, great guys. Everyone loved them. They walked several miles twice a week to go to church. One evening when they were walking home, a drunk driver came speeding down the road. They didn't really think anything of it at first, and then one of them, realizing that the car was going to hit them, at the last second he pushed his brother out of the way. He didn't have enough time to move himself. He died that night. His brother didn't have a scratch on him. People that get behind the wheel of a car sometimes do horrible things. I'm glad you're okay, and I hope that person got what was coming to them. A death like that can really devastate a community. Our little hometown was never quite the same. When I was a kid, my parents took me to NYC all the time. I was pretty comfortable there. Being around all those people in such a busy city didn't really faze me. One day, I somehow got separated from them and just sort of started looking around for them a bit without getting scared at all. After about 15 minutes though, I started crying my eyes out thinking they left without me. I didn't know anyone. No one would even look at me, and I just felt so alone and suddenly overwhelmed by my surroundings. This woman came over to me and picked me up. She didn't speak any English but spoke to me in a calm, relaxed tone and made me calm down and not be as scared. My parents showed up not long after in a complete panic. If it wasn't for that woman, I would have wandered even further and it could have ended up much worse. Now imagine that, except being a 5-year-old white girl in Japan. For some quick backstory, we lived there. From school, I was supposed to take the bus to the end of the line. But instead, I got off at my normal stop where my mom usually picked me up. And after waiting like 10 minutes or so, realized what I did and started bawling, thinking they wouldn't know to come get me. I didn't live on the base and I couldn't speak Japanese yet, and where we lived, most people only knew a little English. Anyway, this nice Japanese woman with a daughter or granddaughter my age started feeding me tissues and saying, no cry, until my parents showed up. So scary when you can't even speak the language and explain to people what's wrong. When I was around 6, my mom was crossing a street at a crosswalk with me and a few kids we babysat, all younger than me, two in a stroller. Suddenly, this truck came barreling around a curve at least 70 kilometers per hour. And my mom had to shove the stroller ahead of her while quickly grabbing me and the other kid by the arms and flinging us out of the way. She barely made it herself. She screamed something like, "You lunatic," at the driver and cried when we got home. My mom took great pains in our younger years not to swear in front of us at that time. For some reason, I wasn't scared and didn't think it was that big a deal since we were all okay. But thinking about it now and how well I remember it, I can't imagine what must have went through my mom's head. When I was in kindergarten, I played with my older brother at my parents' dry cleaners every day after school. We would usually just run around the alley out back, and one late afternoon while we were playing, my brother runs to the car across the alley and gets his Game Boy. I start to follow him but hesitate when I see a car coming pretty quickly to the right. I had an unusual lack of common sense at that time and thought I can totally make it, so I went for it. When I got halfway though, I tripped at the same time the car screeched to a halt, just barely grazing my shoulder. The lady got out of the car and ran over to see if I was okay. I was fine, just had a slightly bruised shoulder and scraped knee. She felt so bad she took me to the Subway next door and brought me a cookie.